The lunch bag felt heavier than it should have. I stood outside Bennett Innovations, staring up at the glass tower that my wife built from nothing, and I told myself the same thing I always told myself before walking in. Just drop it off. Don't linger. Sophia had left in a rush that morning, forgetting the container of soup I'd made her the night before. She always forgot to eat when she was buried in board meetings. So there I was, in my gray jacket, the one with a small tear near the pocket that I kept meaning to fix, walking into a lobby that smelled like money. The receptionist barely looked up. "Can I help you?" "I'm just dropping something off. For Sophia Bennett." That's when I heard the laugh. "Dropping something off for Sophia Bennett," a voice said behind me, dripping with amusement. I turned. A tall man in a sharp navy suit was walking toward the desk, a woman in heels clicking beside him. I didn't know their names yet, but I'd learned them fast enough. Derek Hargrove, VP of Operations, and Vanessa Cruz, Head of HR. "You know her personally?" Derek asked, raising an eyebrow at my jacket like it had personally offended him. "Something like that," I said. Vanessa's eyes swept over me, the jacket, the worn sneakers, the plain lunch bag in my hand, and she smirked at Derek like they'd found a joke to share for the rest of the week. "Let me guess," she said. "You met her at a coffee shop. Told her you were between jobs. Now you're running errands for a paycheck." A few employees near the elevators slowed down to listen. I felt my face get hot. "I'm not running errands for a paycheck," I said quietly. "I'm just bringing her lunch." "Sure you are," Derek said, stepping closer. "Look, buddy, I don't know what you think you're doing here, but Miss Bennett doesn't have time for—" He waved a hand at me, up and down. "Whatever this is. You should head back to wherever you came from." I could have said it right then. "I'm her husband." 3 words. That's all it would have taken to shut them both up. But Sophia's voice was in my head, the way it had been for 2 years now. "Please, Ethan, if people at the office know who you are, they'll treat you differently. They'll want things from you. They'll watch everything we do together. I just want one place where nobody's watching us." I understood it. I did. Her father built this company from a garage, and after he died, every vulture in the industry tried to circle her. Reporters, investors, men pretending to fall in love with her just to get close to her money. She didn't want that life bleeding into the only piece she had left. Our marriage. Our small apartment. Our quiet mornings. So I'd agreed. No wedding photos online. No mention of my last name at company events. If anyone from her office asked, I was just a friend. I never thought a friend would turn into some broke guy chasing a rich woman. "I just need to drop this off," I said again, holding up the bag like it was proof of something. "That's all." Vanessa laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Oh my God, he's serious." She turned to the small crowd that had gathered, 3 or 4 employees pretending to check their phones while clearly listening to every word. "You guys hear this? He just needs to drop it off." "What's in the bag, man?" Derek said, smirking. "Homemade soup. Did you make her lunch too? That's cute. Real cute." Someone behind me snickered. I didn't turn around to see who. "Look," Derek continued, lowering his voice like he was doing me a favor. "I get it. She's beautiful, she's rich, and guys like you see an opportunity. But you gotta have some self-respect. This isn't your world. Go home. This isn't your world." I stood there holding a lunch bag in a lobby full of strangers, and for the first time in 2 years of marriage, I felt something crack open in my chest. Not anger, exactly. Something quieter and worse. Shame. I thought about saying something. I thought about telling them exactly who I was, watching their faces fall, watching them scramble to apologize. But Sophia's rule was still Sophia's rule, and I wasn't about to break it in a lobby full of people just to save my pride. So I said nothing. I just stood there, jaw tight, listening to Vanessa whisper something to Derek that made him laugh again. "Sir, maybe it's best if you head out," the receptionist said gently, glancing between us like she felt sorry for me. I nodded, turned toward the door. That's when I heard footsteps stop behind the front desk. Quick, sharp, like someone had frozen mid-step. I glanced back. A woman in a cream blazer, headset still looped around her neck, was staring straight at me. Her mouth had gone slightly open, like she'd just recognized a ghost. I didn't know her name yet, Grace Lynn, Sophia's executive assistant, but I would never forget the look on her face in that moment. It wasn't confusion. It was fear. Like she already knew exactly who I was and exactly what was about to happen. I didn't leave. My feet just stopped listening to me. "You're still here," Derek said, arms crossed now, enjoying himself. "What? You need directions to the door." I looked at Grace one more time. She was still frozen behind the desk, headset in her hand, mouth pressed into a tight line like she was holding back words she wasn't allowed to say. "I was leaving," I said. "Good," Vanessa said, "because whatever you're trying to pull here isn't going to work." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because 2 years ago, in a rundown coffee shop 3 blocks from my apartment, none of this would have made sense to me either. I met Sophia on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were slow at the shop where I freelance from, and she'd walked in wearing a plain hoodie, no makeup, sunglasses pushed up into her hair. She looked tired. Normal. Nothing like a CEO. "Is this seat taken?" she'd asked, nodding at the empty chair across from me. "Go ahead." We talked for 2 hours that day. She never mentioned her last name. I never asked. She told me she worked in operations, kind of a stressful job, and I told her I was a graphic designer trying to build a client list. She laughed at my jokes. I liked the way she laughed like she'd forgotten she was allowed to. It wasn't until our 4th date that she told me the truth. "I need to tell you something," she'd said, twisting her coffee cup in her hands. "I'm not just in operations. I run a company. A big one." "Okay," I said. "Ethan, I'm serious. My name is Sophia Bennett. My father founded Bennett Innovations. When he died, I took over. I'm worth," she stopped herself, like even saying the number out loud embarrassed her. "It's a lot." I remember sitting there, processing it, and then asking the only question that mattered to me. "Does that change anything about you? The person I've been having coffee with for a month?" "No." "Then it doesn't change anything for me either." She started crying right there in the coffee shop, and I didn't understand why until she explained it. Every man before me had either run from the money or run toward it. Nobody had just sat there and asked if she was still herself. "Sir," a voice said, snapping me back. "Sir, are you listening?" Derek was standing closer now, hands in his pockets, rocking on his heels like he was warming up for something. "I asked you a question," he said. "Are you here to beg for a loan? Because I've seen this before. Guys show up, sob story ready, hoping Ms. Bennett writes them a check out of guilt." "I'm not asking for anything," I said. "Then what exactly are you asking for?" Vanessa cut in, arms folded, eyebrow raised like she was daring me to answer wrong. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not without breaking the promise I'd made to Sophia the week before our wedding. "Please, Ethan." We'd been sitting on the floor of our apartment, wedding invitations spread across the carpet, and she'd looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on her before. "Scared. If people at work find out who you are to me, everything changes. They'll start watching every decision I make. They'll wonder if you're influencing me. They'll wonder if I'm only successful because of who I married. I need one place, just one, where none of that touches us." "Okay," I'd said. "I'll be nobody at your office. I promise." I hadn't known, back then, that nobody would eventually mean standing in a lobby getting laughed at by people who worked for my own wife. "You know what?" Vanessa said, glancing at Derek with a smirk. "Just go home. Get a real job. Maybe then people will take you seriously." Something in my chest twisted, tight and hot. 2 years of biting my tongue. 2 years of introducing myself as a friend at company holiday parties. 2 years of watching people like Derek walk past me without a second glance because I didn't look important enough to notice. I opened my mouth. I was done. Promise or no promise, I was going to say it. "Actually, sir, please step back from the desk," the security guard said, suddenly appearing at my side, hand raised, not touching me but close enough to make it clear I wasn't going anywhere without a fight. "I wasn't doing anything," I said. "Elevator's about to open," the guard said, not to me, but to Derek and Vanessa, like it was some kind of warning. "Ms. Bennett is on her way down." Derek's smug expression didn't move. Good. Maybe she can confirm this guy's story herself. I felt my stomach drop, not because I was scared of what Sophia would say, Because I knew exactly what she'd do the second she saw me standing here like this. And once she did it, there would be no more hiding, no more promises, no more quiet mornings where nobody outside our apartment knew my name. The elevator light above the doors blinked once. Then again, I heard the soft chime, and I stopped breathing. The doors slid open. Sophia stepped out in her charcoal blazer, phone in one hand, the other hand pulling her hair back from her face. She was mid-sentence to someone beside her, laughing at something, completely unaware. Then she saw me. Her laugh cut off like someone had hit pause. Her eyes moved from my face to Derek's, then to Vanessa's, then to the small crowd of employees still lingering near the front desk pretending not to watch. I saw her put the pieces together in real time. The security guard's hand near my arm, the smirks on Derek and Vanessa's faces, the lunch bag still clutched in my fist like a shield. Nobody moved. Then Sophia walked straight toward me, heels clicking against the marble floor, each step slower and more deliberate than the last, like she was giving herself time to decide exactly what she was about to do. "Ethan," she said. "Hey," I said quietly. "You forgot your—" She didn't let me finish. She closed the distance, put both hands on my face, and kissed me right there in the middle of the lobby. I heard someone gasp. When she pulled back, she didn't whisper. She said it loud enough for the entire room to hear. "Hi, husband." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever experienced. I watched Derek's face change in stages. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something closer to horror as the word husband fully landed. Vanessa's mouth opened, closed, opened again, no sound coming out. "Sophia," Derek started. We didn't know that he was." "You didn't know he was what?" Sophia asked, turning to him, her voice flat and cold in a way I'd only heard once before, the day a supplier tried to scam her father's old company. "Finish the sentence, Derek." Derek's jaw worked, but nothing came out. "Ms. Bennett, there's clearly been a misunderstanding," Vanessa said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We had no idea this was your husband. If we had known—" "If you had known," Sophia repeated slowly, "you would have treated him differently. Is that what you're telling me?" Nobody answered. Sophia turned to Grace, who was still standing behind the desk, pale, gripping her headset like it was the only solid thing in the room. "Grace," Sophia said, "pull the lobby security footage. All of it, going back to when he walked in." "Right away," Grace said, already moving toward her computer, fingers shaking slightly on the keyboard. "Sophia, really, this is unnecessary," Derek said, forcing a laugh that came out hollow. "It was just a small mix-up. Nothing worth." "Small mix-up," Sophia said, turning back to him. "My husband is standing here holding a lunch bag, and you're telling me it's a small mix-up." I watched her hands curl at her sides. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at Derek the way I imagined she looked at people in boardrooms right before she destroyed their proposal. A young man near the elevators shifted nervously, glancing at Grace, then at Sophia, then back at the floor. I didn't know his name yet, Chris Doyle, one of the junior analysts, but something in the way he kept opening and closing his mouth told me he wanted to say something and was terrified to. Grace noticed too. She stepped away from her desk and walked toward him, lowering her voice. "Chris," she said quietly, "did you hear what they said to him?" He hesitated. His eyes flicked toward Derek, who was still trying to explain himself to Sophia, then back to Grace. "They called him a gold digger," Chris said, barely above a whisper. "Vanessa said he should go get a real job. Derek asked if he was here to beg for a loan." He swallowed hard. "It's happened before too. Not just today." Grace's face went tight. She turned toward Sophia, but Sophia was already looking at me, and the moment our eyes met, I knew she'd heard every word Chris said. "Ethan," Sophia said, and her voice had changed completely now, all the coldness gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like fear. "What did he mean? It's happened before." I didn't answer right away. 2 years of biting my tongue doesn't just disappear because someone finally asked the right question. "Ethan," she said again, stepping closer, her hand finding mine. "How long has this been happening?" The lobby was still silent. Derek had stopped talking. Vanessa had stopped pretending. Grace stood beside Chris, both of them watching me the way you watch someone about to jump off a ledge. I looked at my wife, the woman who ran a company worth more money than I could count, who could fire every person in this room with a single phone call, who had just kissed me in front of everyone she worked with without a second of hesitation. And I realized I didn't have it in me to lie to her anymore. Since the beginning, I said. Since the first month after the wedding. Sophia's hand tightened around mine. What? Every time I came here, someone had something to say. A comment about my jacket. A joke about my car. Vanessa asked me once if I was your charity project. My voice cracked on the last part, and I hated that it did, but I kept going. I never told you because you asked me to keep quiet about who I was to your staff. I thought if I said something, I'd be breaking that promise. So I just smiled and said nothing. Sophia stared at me like I'd knocked the air out of her. You let them treat you like that, she said slowly, for 2 years. Because of a promise I made you keep. It wasn't your fault. Don't, she said, and her voice shook. Don't you dare tell me it wasn't my fault. I asked you to hide who you were so people here wouldn't treat me differently. And the entire time, they were treating you like garbage, and you never told me, because you thought protecting my peace mattered more than protecting yourself. Derek cleared his throat from a few feet away, clearly hoping to redirect the conversation before it got worse for him. Sophia, if I can just say something, this all sounds like a big misunderstanding. Nobody meant any harm. We simply didn't have context. Sophia turned to him so fast I almost flinched. You called my husband a gold digger, Derek. What context were you missing exactly? I never said. Derek stopped, realizing Chris was still standing right there. Look, whatever was said, it was in poor taste, I'll admit that. But it was harmless office banter. People misspeak. Harmless, Sophia repeated. I think, Vanessa cut in, stepping forward with her arms crossed. We should also consider that Chris might be exaggerating what he heard. He's new. He probably misunderstood the tone. Chris's face went pale. I didn't misunderstand anything. I heard exactly what you said. Chris, Vanessa said sharply, I'd be careful about making accusations you can't back up. There's an entire lobby of security cameras, Grace said quietly from behind a desk, not looking up from her monitor. You might want to be careful too. Vanessa's mouth snapped shut. Sophia held up a hand before anyone else could speak. Everyone stopped talking. The lobby went silent again. I want the entire executive team in the 4th floor conference room at 6 o'clock tonight. Every manager who was present for any of this, or who has interacted with my husband before today. No exceptions. Tonight. Derek said. Sophia, it's already 6 o'clock, Sophia said, not raising her voice, which somehow made it worse. I suggest you be there. She turned to me, and just like that, the executive standing in front of investors and boardrooms disappeared, and it was just Sophia again, my wife, eyes glassy, jaw tight like she was holding back tears out of sheer will. Come upstairs with me, she said. Please. I nodded, and we walked past Derek and Vanessa without another word. Later, sitting in her office with the door closed, I finally let myself breathe. Sophia paced in front of the window, arms crossed, staring out at the city like it owed her an explanation. My phone buzzed. Marcus, you good? Told Diane you were dropping off lunch. She wants to know if you survived the trip to the ivory tower, LOL. I stepped into the hallway to call him back. Hey, Marcus said. How'd it go? Not great, I said, and told him everything. The lobby. Derek. Vanessa. Sophia finding out. Marcus was quiet for a second. Ethan. Man. You've been letting these people talk to you like that for 2 years. It wasn't that simple. It's exactly that simple, he said. You've been shrinking yourself for a promise that was never supposed to cost you your dignity. Sophia wouldn't have wanted that. You know that, right? I didn't answer. Put your mom on, he said. Actually, no, she's right here. Hold on. My mother's voice came through a second later, warm and worried. Ethan, honey, are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. You are not fine, she said. Marcus just told me what happened. Baby, I love that you're a humble man. I raised you to be humble. But there's a difference between humility and letting people wipe their feet on you. She paused. You've always been so afraid of taking up space in that woman's world. It's time you stopped. I leaned against the hallway wall, throat tight. I didn't want to make things harder for Sophia. I know, she said gently. But baby, look what staying quiet cost you instead. I hung up a few minutes later and stood there for a moment, letting it sink in. When I walked back into Sophia's office, she was sitting behind her desk, arms folded on top of it, staring at nothing. I've called the board, she said without looking up. 6 o'clock. I want you there too. Sophia, you don't have to. I do, she said, finally looking at me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not just anger. Guilt. I built a company on the idea that people deserve respect no matter their title. And the entire time, I let my own husband get treated like nothing right under my roof because I was so afraid of losing my privacy that I never once asked if you were okay. She stood up, walked around the desk, and took both my hands in hers. Tonight, she said, that changes. The fourth-floor conference room was packed by 6 o'clock. Every department head, every senior manager, all of them murmuring to each other, glancing at the closed door like they already sensed something was wrong. I sat near the back, next to Grace, who had come up to help pull the footage onto the main screen. Chris sat a few rows ahead of us, hands clasped tightly in his lap. At exactly 6, Sophia walked in. The room went quiet immediately. She didn't sit. She stood at the front, hands folded, and let the silence stretch until every phone was down and every eye was on her. Thank you all for coming on short notice, she said. I'll keep this simple. Earlier today, my husband came here to bring me lunch. While he was in the lobby, he was mocked, insulted, and accused of being a gold digger by 2 members of this leadership team. I have video and witness testimony confirming this happened, and I have since learned it wasn't the first time. A ripple went through the room. Derek, sitting near the front with Vanessa beside him, straightened in his chair. Sophia, before this goes any further, Derek said, standing, I think we should discuss this privately. There's no need to air this out in front of the entire company. Sit down, Derek, Sophia said. He hesitated, then Saturday. Sophia nodded to Grace, who pulled up the lobby footage on the screen behind her. There was no sound, but the video didn't need sound. Everyone in the room watched Derek step toward me, watched Vanessa laugh, watched the small crowd gather and snicker while I stood there holding a lunch bag. For those who can't read lips, Sophia said, I have the audio as well, pulled from the front desk microphone. Grace. Grace played it. Derek's voice filled the room. Are you here to beg for a loan? Vanessa's laugh. Go home and get a real job. I watched several people in the room shift uncomfortably in their seats. Someone near the front covered their mouth. Sophia, in fairness, Vanessa said, her voice higher than usual. We had no idea who he was. If we'd known he was your husband, we obviously wouldn't have. That's the problem, Vanessa, Sophia said. Not that you didn't know. That it wouldn't have mattered if you did. You treated a man like he was worthless because you assumed he had no money and no title. That tells me exactly what kind of company culture you've built underneath me while I wasn't watching. Vanessa's mouth closed. I also have testimony, Sophia continued, that this wasn't an isolated incident. Chris, would you like to stand, or would you prefer I summarize? Chris stood slowly, hands shaking slightly. I've seen it happen at least 3 times before today. Comments about his clothes, his car, jokes about him living off Ms. Bennett. It was kind of an open joke in the office, actually. Everyone knew not to mention it around her. Sophia's face didn't move, but I saw her hands tighten at her sides. An open joke, she repeated. So this wasn't 2 people having a bad day. This was a pattern. Known. Tolerated. Encouraged. Even. Nobody answered. My father built this company from a garage, Sophia said, and her voice changed, quieter now but somehow louder in the silence. When he had nothing, people underestimated him constantly. Investors laughed him out of rooms, and he used to tell me one thing over and over until I understood it in my bones. He said, Sophia, the way you treat someone who can do nothing for you tells me everything about your character. That was the entire foundation of this company. Not profit margins, not titles. Respect, regardless of paycheck. She looked around the room slowly. You all failed that principle today. Some of you failed it repeatedly. Derek stood again, jaw tight. Sophia, I've been with this company for 9 years. I helped you through the transition after your father passed. I don't think one incident, blown out of proportion, should erase. One incident, Sophia said. Try repeated humiliation of my husband, mockery you didn't think would ever reach me, and then a lobby full of witnesses lying to my face about it 20 minutes ago. Derek, you're fired. Effective immediately. The room went dead silent. You can't do that, Derek said, his voice rising. I have a contract. 9 years of tenure. You need cause. I have video, audio, and 3 witnesses, Sophia said. That's cause. Security will escort you out tonight. HR will process your severance according to your contract, nothing more. Derek's face had gone pale. Sophia, be reasonable. Vanessa, Sophia continued, cutting him off completely, you're the head of HR. Your entire job is to protect this company's culture and its people. Instead, you participated in tearing someone down and then tried to discredit a junior employee for telling the truth. You're fired as well. Vanessa opened her mouth, then closed it, tears already forming. Marcus Reyes, Patricia Owens, Sophia said, turning to 2 managers sitting near the middle of the room, both of whom went rigid. I have footage of both of you laughing along in the lobby today, and testimony that you've made similar comments in the past. You're both terminated, effective tonight. Nobody protested this time. The room had gone so quiet I could hear the air conditioning hum overhead. Sophia turned back to Derek, who was still standing, fists clenched at his sides. For 9 years, I trusted you to help me run this company the way my father would have wanted it run, she said. Today you showed me exactly who you are when you thought I wasn't watching. That's the real reason you're leaving. Not the lobby. Not the footage. The fact that it took a security camera for me to see who was standing next to me this whole time. Derek didn't say anything else. Security appeared at the door a moment later, and I watched him walk out without looking at anyone. I sat there, quiet, watching my wife stand at the front of that room, and for the first time all day, I didn't feel small. I felt like I'd finally been seen. By the end of the week, the office felt different. I only heard about most of it secondhand, but Sophia told me over dinner one night, still a little amazed by it herself. I promoted Grace, she said, Director of Operations. She's been running half of Derek's responsibilities without the title for years anyway. It was overdue. That's great, I said. She deserves it. And Chris, Sophia added. I moved him into a senior analyst role. Gave him a raise too. He was terrified to tell the truth in that meeting, and he did it anyway. That's the kind of person I want representing this company. I smiled, twirling my fork against my plate. Look at you, cleaning house. I should have been paying closer attention a long time ago, she said, and the smile faded from her face. Ethan, can we talk? Really talk? I set my fork down. Yeah, of course. She was quiet for a moment, like she was choosing her words carefully. I keep thinking about what Chris said, that it was an open joke in the office, that everyone knew not to mention it around me, which means people watched it happen over and over, and nobody said anything. Not because they didn't see it, because they didn't think it mattered enough to say something. Sophia, it's not. Let me finish, she said gently. I need to say this. I built a rule that protected my privacy at the cost of your dignity, and I never once checked in to ask if that rule was hurting you. That's on me. I looked down at the table. It wasn't just the rule, I admitted. It was me too. I've spent 2 years feeling like I didn't belong in your world. Like people were always doing math in their heads, comparing what I make to what you make, deciding I wasn't worth much because of it. Ethan, I'm a graphic designer, I said. Some months I make good money, some months I don't. And every time I walked into that building, I felt like I had to prove I wasn't some guy living off his wife. I never told you because saying it out loud made it feel true. Sophia reached across the table and took my hand. Your worth was never about money. It never has been, not for one single day since I met you in that coffee shop. Do you know what I fell in love with? A man who asked if anything about me had changed, right after I told him I was worth more money than most people will see in 10 lifetimes. You didn't care about the number. You cared about me. My throat tightened. I just didn't want to be the reason people whispered about you. They can whisper all they want, she said. Let them. I'd rather have people question my marriage than watch my husband shrink himself into nothing to protect my comfort. That's not a trade I'm willing to make anymore. She squeezed my hand. I want you to come to the office whenever you want, she said. No more hiding. No more just a friend. I want people to know exactly who you are to me, because I am proud, Ethan. I have always been proud. I just did a terrible job of showing it. You don't have to say all that, I said, my voice rough. I do, she said, because you've been saying it to yourself in silence for 2 years, and it's about time somebody said it out loud instead. 3 weeks later, I walked back into Bennett Innovations, lunch bag in hand, same gray jacket, tear near the pocket still unrepaired because I genuinely kept forgetting to fix it. The receptionist looked up and smiled immediately. Mr. Cole, good to see you. Ms. Bennett mentioned you might stop by. Ethan, Grace said, walking past with a stack of files, pausing just long enough to squeeze my arm. Congratulations on the promotion, by the way. What promotion? You'll see, she said, smiling, already walking away. Chris passed by a moment later and gave me an actual, genuine nod. Good to see you, Mr. Cole. I stood in that same lobby where I'd once been laughed at, holding the same kind of bag, wearing the same kind of jacket, and this time nobody smirked. Nobody whispered. A few people even said hello. I took the elevator up, and when the doors opened on Sophia's floor, she was already walking toward me, a smile breaking across her face like she'd been waiting all morning. Hey, husband, she said, kissing me right there in front of everyone, exactly the way she had the first time, except now it didn't feel like a scandal. It felt like coming home.